Well, welcome back to Wisdom with the Wise Counselor. I'm your host, the Wise Counselor, also known by my birth name, simply Lateef. This podcast is all about building your emotional resiliency, thinking about wellness, mental health, reclaiming your authority, learning how to live your life on purpose and purpose. I'm not talking about just today, but I'm talking about 24/7, 365. Now, let me tell you a little story because I'm just jumping right on in. Today is Juneteenth, and I'm going to release this today. And yesterday, I was at a store trying to grab a few things, minding my business and to get out before the crowd hit. You know how it is. And I was in the line at the U-Scan, and that backs up like nobody's business. And the lady in front of me turned around. She had a couple of kids with her. They were cute. And so we just started talking. And you know me, in public, I'm going to say hello. If you make eye contact with me, I'm going to say hello. I'm going to figure out the who, the what, the when, the where, the why of you, So we started talking about light stuff. She was talking about how her kids were off of summer camp tomorrow and how she was looking forward towards a long weekend, and she was off tomorrow because it's Juneteenth, small talk. And then, when she said, I'm off tomorrow, I think it's some kind of federal holiday or something. That's exactly what she said. And I thought to myself, ooh, like that, it hit me. She does not even know why she's off tomorrow. She has no idea what Juneteenth was. And listen, I'm not here to make a hierarchy of race. I'm not going to even tell you what color this lady was, but let me say this. I'm not trying to drag her through the mud, but it brought up some very, very important conversations that we need to have. Let's call a thing a thing. Come on now. It's 2025 and we still have grown adults, people with children walking around, and they have no idea what Juneteenth is actually about and what it stands for. Really, when I left the store, I was kind of, I don't want to say offended because I'm not going to get offended about other people's ignorance, but I will say it's comical. It was frustrating. And really, when I let it sit and settle, I was sad. More than that, it was revealing because it shows how it shows how comfortable we've become with not knowing. We take days off, but we don't take the time to really understand what they're about. We celebrate a break, but we do not celebrate the burden. But Juneteenth ain't about cooking out. It's not about just celebrating Black people. It's not another paid holiday. It's history. It's history soaked in pain and perseverance for many people, even outside of those who are of color. It's the delayed declaration of freedom that finally reached Texas 2.5 years after the Emancipation Proclamation. That's not just a delay. That was a betrayal. Let's be real. And it's a silence that screamed, So when somebody says, oh, I'm off for Juneteenth and doesn't know why, I'm trying not to take it personally. In fact, I'm not taking it personally, but I'm saddened and I'm burdened by the lack of ignorance and awareness around something so critical. Really, it's painful because what does it say when freedom, everybody's freedom, becomes something folks don't even bother to understand or to learn about or even care about? See, ignorance has gotten real cozy in America. Let's call it what it is. Come on now. Ignorance has gotten really cozy in America, in our lives, in our daily walks, in our perspectives, in our pursuits of justice and truth and righteousness. And I want to challenge you today, family. What if we stop making ignorance the default? Did you hear me? What if we, everybody, myself included, stopped making ignorance the default? What if we used these holidays as holy days of maybe even reflection? What if we sat our kids down and told them what these days really mean? Let me tell you something. When we have a federal holiday, I don't care if it's Independence Day or MLK Day or Labor Day, Memorial Day, whatever the case may be, I intentionally wake up. I always start my day off in prayer and gratitude. That's a given. But I also get on my phone and I actually look up the reason why I'm off and remind myself of what this day or whatever the holiday is that we're celebrating, thinking about. I shouldn't say these holidays are all for celebration, but they're for remembrance and recognition. Nevertheless, I remind myself why I'm off and what that holiday represents, what I'm going to do with that information. Do I understand how that connects to the American dream and the journey, how that affects my people, how this holiday affects me personally, so that is something that I have done really since I was a teenager, when I realized I had no clue what some of these days even represented. I'm going to tell you straight up, ask people what the difference between Labor Day, Memorial Day, and 4th of July is. And I guarantee most people are going to stumble over that. So how much more do you think people are going to be ignorant about what Juneteenth is? Come on. So if we use these holidays as holy days and start reflecting on it, I think that could help us put our hearts in a better posture. What if we made space to understand the hard stories? What if we made space to understand the stories, period? Then you can make a determination if it was hard or not. What if we stopped calling it the past and started calling it the legacy that we all get the opportunity to carry, right? Because Juneteenth is not about pity. It's about power. It's about remembering that even when freedom comes late, we can still claim it fully. It's about community, about acknowledging the resiliency in our DNA, about choosing to know better so that we can actually do better. Imagine that. Learn so that you can be better and then actually do something with it and be better. We don't need more diversity statements. I'm done with all this DEI stuff. Listen, baby, if you don't know what DEI is and why it impacts the world that you live in, you are an idiot. I'm going to call a spade a spade. If you don't see the value in DEI and understand the deep-rooted messages beyond black and white people, you are an idiot, and I challenge you to go dive deeply. All of this rigmarole about DEI and cutting stuff is nothing but a slap in everybody's face when you bottom line it. But listen, I'm going to digress, and we'll save that for another day. But this day is about community, about acknowledging the resiliency, like I said, that is in our DNA. It's about choosing to know better and do better so you can know better so that we can do better. We don't need to be thinking about this as only a day of diversity. Yes, we're celebrating the diversity, but there's so much more to this. We need more historical literature about this. We need to dive deep into research and really be immersed in this again, because every holiday has some impact to you on some level. We don't need performative parades. Those things are well and good. And I love that we're bringing some type of recognition to it. But at the end of the day, baby, I'm a man of simplicity. What we need is transformation and practices put into place that help to inspire, educate, and make a foundation where equity becomes the norm. And we surely don't need another year of folks grilling ribs and missing the point of what these holidays, Juneteenth and others included, actually represent. So let's move to the segment that I like to call the Wise Counselor Unfiltered. It's real, it's raw, it's honest. I don't want to sugarcoat today. Let me give it to you straight up. Here's my raw big 3 takeaways about this. If you're benefiting from a holiday you don't understand, baby, let me let you know that is privilege. Sit with that. If you're benefiting from a holiday that you don't understand, that's privilege. What are you going to do about that moving forward? That's up for you to decide. Number 2, don't just post the quote. You got to do the work and teach the story. You got to share it at the table. Send the message out to friends and community and keep conversations that are meaningful and rich and true at the forefront of other people's minds. Sometimes you got to position yourself to say it loud. We need healing by remembering. And if you're not using your voice to push forward and to help people be reminded and educated in their ignorance, then baby, I want you to sit with that. Are you really using your voice, your platform, your life to model the way and help other people grow, change, and get better? And number 3, stop letting schools and companies and culture do the learning for you. Google is free. Ignorance is expensive. Let me say that again. Stop letting schools and companies and culture do the learning for you, including the news. I mean, how often do we try to get educated about big level events and we're getting that straight from 2020 or the news or the local channels or whatever? I'm not saying that those platforms are not beneficial in some way, but do not let that be your norm. Do the work yourself. Do the work yourself. A reminder, Google is absolutely free. And ignorance is expensive. Do not get in a space where you're just going to let the world teach you when you have the ability, you have the know-how, you have the resources to do the work yourself. You can answer the questions that you have. You can sit and think about the questions and then answer them based on the wanderings that you have and make it applicable to you. Isn't that what health and mental wellness and growth is all about? Taking something that you know a little bit about or that you may not know anything about and finding the strength and the courage internally to do the work and the research yourself so that you can come to a resolve and understand how those things can be implemented into your life or how that needs to look in your life, or just make a determination on how you're going to use that information to be better, to do better, and to actually do the work. Family, that is what I have for today. I hope I wasn't too aggressive, but I just want to make sure that, people can't sit in ignorance. Ignorance is absolutely a choice. And as I was standing in that line with her, I'm not here to bash anybody's journey. I have no clue about what that lady's journey was, except for what she told me and that she was grateful that she was off tomorrow. She couldn't remember what the holiday was. But at the end of the day, I'm going to let it go. I wanted to make this podcast to let you know that you have a choice. If you know that you don't know something, the question is, what are you going to do about that? I really do hope that the conversations don't go in one ear and out the other. I really want you to reflect, and I want you to pause today. In fact, why don't you just do that as a moment to remember what the sacrifices of what other people have done for you to get to where you are at today, whether you black, whether you white. I don't care what your race or ethnicity is. If you are in this great US of A, let me tell you this, and it's the truth. Somebody made a sacrifice. How are you honoring that today? Somebody had to delay their pathway so that you could be where you are today. You may not know them by name, but let me tell you, you better pause and honor them, because that's just what's right to do. And then when you start thinking about somebody squashing your growth, what are you going to do about that in 2025? What if somebody held you captive, literally or figuratively? Maybe you don't have money. Maybe you were enslaved. Maybe you didn't have a way to get to a job or whatever. If somebody keeps you enslaved in a way that you think is keeping you enslaved, how would you feel? I really want you to think about that, and then use that energy and that emotion and that raw pit feeling in your heart and in your gut, and think about how you're going to use that to make the world and the community better. So I want you to ease into yourself today. I want you to remember that there is no time like the present moment to reclaim yourself, to take care of yourself, and to dig deeper into how you're going to walk in your purpose. And sometimes we talk about walking in purpose, but you can't walk in purpose if you don't acknowledge the history and the past of not only yourself and your family, but the history of where your feet walk every single day. Reminder that great things don't happen overnight. You've got to take your time. You've got to ease into you. This is a topic today that I don't want you to ponder it too long. I want you to just dive in. Pause, dive in, and learn something more about Juneteenth and why it matters. At the end of the day, baby, I have to remind you that when it's all said and done, you are the only one who is in control of your thoughts, your actions, and your reactions to what life throws your way. If you didn't know, this is Wisdom with the Wise Counselor. I'm the Wise Counselor, and as always, I thank you for joining me. Oh, but before we go, I got some post-podcast homework that I really want you to think about before we move on with your day. I want you to sit with these 3 questions. What has Juneteenth meant to you personally? Number 2, have you ever benefited from a moment of somebody else's struggle without realizing it? And what did that reveal to you? And finally, how can you honor history with more intention moving forward? In your home, at your workplace, in your conversations, how can you honor history with more intention? If this episode stirred something in you, don't just keep it to yourself. Share it with somebody. Let's start a dialogue, because silence may not always be hateful, but it is always loud. Until next time, know that I love you, I believe in you, and I have absolutely no doubt that whatever you're facing today, you absolutely got this. Be well.